to the Future of the Martech Stack, presented by Martech Advisor. I'm Ginger Conlon, a contributing editor to Martech Advisor and your host for today's webcast. Joining us are two fabulous presenters. I'm so excited to have them with us today. We have Christine Crandall, who is Chief Customer Strategist and President of Consultancy New Business Strategies. And also joining us is Christopher Faust, who is CMO of SAI Global, which is an enterprise risk management software company. And they're going to go into detail on defining, selecting, and building out your Martech stack. So you're probably all familiar with Chief Martech's 2017 Marketing Technology Landscape Supergraphic. That features more than 5,000 Martech vendors. And that's an increase of nearly 40% over last year, which is absolutely huge. And that scale can feel near debilitating to marketers looking to define, select, and build a Martech stack that meets their specific goals and boosts their specific marketing performance. So fortunately, we've got Christine and Christopher here today to talk about how to get past that deer in the headlights feeling and move towards getting the most from your Martech stack. Now, before we jump into the questions, I'd really like to have Christine and Christopher take a moment to introduce themselves so you can get a sense of context of their perspective. So, Christine, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role.
So thanks a lot, Ginger, and it's a real pleasure to be here, and especially to speak with Christopher, who I have, immense respect for and for his background. I've been in the industry in the marketing role for, well over 30 years, both public and private companies, and focused right now on working with companies on aligning their organizations outward to the customer. And interestingly, that then starts to break down into marketing strategy, and inevitably the Martech stack comes up in the conversation, because if you don't have a 360-degree view of the customer, you really can't operationalize it, right? So data is everything. So that's a little bit about myself.
Excellent, thanks. And Christopher.
So I have been a marketing executive for far too many decades that I can count, and I've always been marketing enterprise software. So it's always been within that sort of tech industry. And what I love about marketing is how you, especially today, is how you have to constantly reinvent yourself, your teams, including the marketing stack that you surround yourself with. But that's what makes it so exciting and fun. And I'll probably be another decade or two here to talk again about this.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. We hope to have you around for as long as possible in the industry, because the two of you are such stellar authorities. And so with that, let's talk a little bit about what is a Martech stack, because how terminology in marketing can get a little fuzzy sometimes. So Christopher, why don't you start us off? How do you define a Martech stack?
Well, it's funny. I suppose in a word, it's complex today. You mentioned 5,000 vendors, and that's wild. I mean, it was 5 years ago, it was only a couple hundred, 40% just over this past year. To me, which is it's good, obviously, because there's some innovative things out there that teams can leverage to make them more effective, more efficient. But for me, it's more about the right mix. It's the right mix of marketing technology. It's got to be rooted in really, truly understanding your customers, right? So as Christine mentioned, that data is really, really important. So having that right mix of marketing tech, again, from advertising tech, whether that's ABM or otherwise, to social experience engagement. I mean, there's so many different pieces, obviously, but when you tie it together in the journey of a buyer, essentially, whether you're attracting, educating, you're getting them into the fold, nurturing them, all the way to advocacy, kind of thinking through all those different pieces at each step where the customer is, stitching that right mix together is the right marketing tech stack. To me, I think also from what is it? It's the backbone. It is absolutely the backbone of any high-performing marketing team, because it's not just about making it easier for the team to collaborate or or to get that data, it really is rooted in connecting it to revenue. And I think in today's stack, you can do that. Marketing is so measurable, and you really can measure it every step of the way on that buyer journey.
And Christine, so I'd like to ask you the same question, but also, like what might you add? But also, because of your broad perspective on the market, any misconceptions that you're seeing out there that are a little too common that you could clear up also while we're talking about defining what the Martech Stack is?
So my background way back when is, comes out of the true IT world. So when I hear terms such as Martech Stack, to me it is coming from the IT stack where you have layer upon layer upon layer, which each layer on top leverages whatever the layer beneath it is, right? So you had your bare metal and you had your operating system and you had your database and then you have your applications. And when I look at the Martech Stack, that to me is really a core component. And we look at the bottom of having the data, the collaboration layer, and then the different applications to support each of the disciplines. And then on top of that, you've got database and dashboards and analytics in order to analyze what's really going on to be able to fine tune it. And so I think part of the myth is that we really don't look at these stacks in this layer, this layer cake view. We sort of look at it very loosely as this combination of these 50 different categories and these 5,000 different vendors, and it's less of a stack than it is a pile of software in the hopes of it trying to solve something, right? And so when I look, so I think part of the challenge is having a much more rigorous look at this pile and saying, really, what is this core foundation of which it's the data, where is it coming from, how do we keep it clean, how are we then leveraging it, and then how do the applications actually then mesh together versus being these isolated islands that are sort of floating around like the things in the Avatar movie, those little mountains that were floating in the sky. So the challenge, I think, is that, and shame on the vendors, because the challenge is it's now the onus is on the marketer to sort of sort this all out and figure out, well, really, one, what is my requirement? What is the technology environment that I'm in? Is it on-prem? Is it cloud? Is it multi-cloud? Is it hybrid cloud? And how do I stitch these pieces together, of which many of them don't play very nice together? So, and many of them overlap. So I really feel as if the Martech Stack is, to Christopher's point, this foundation, but we have made it so doggone hard for marketers to actually operationalize that concept.
So one thing to add there is, because you said the word misconception, and I think one of the most misused terms in the software industry as a whole, not just in Martech, is analytics. Because analytics is not just a report of where you've been, it really is looking at where you want to go and how you get there. So really analyzing and making that actionable, I think, is really, really important. And there are some cool tech out there that are starting to do that in a very deep and meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you both talked about the Martech Stack as the backbone, and on the one hand, but on the other hand, being kind of a pile that really still needs to be organized into a stack. So what is the urgency that's come about that's driving this realization among marketers that we've got all this technology, we actually have to organize it from stack to backbone? Christine, you want to jump in with that?
Yeah, I think it's because of, and this is not a new issue, okay? I think, but it's a more emphasized issue where the CMO, the VP of marketing, pick your title, has this bullseye on their back. And I hear this all the time from my clients and from people I talk to, of which that there's this expectation within the C-suite of tell us how that we're going to grow, given that we're now in the age of the customer, and the customer is actually defining what that journey looks like and what those interactions are. And so I think the CMO is feeling, let's just use it generic. The CMO is feeling a lot of heat. And at the same time, right, they're looking for those insights. How do I look around the corner and read the tea leaves in terms of what's going to happen, and how do I adequately determine where I allocate my spend in order to drive revenue? And so there's this confluence of events that's starting to happen, that's being pushed by the bullseye on the back of the CMO, that's being pushed by people realizing back in the 1990s when we had CRM systems that it wasn't really about customer relationship management, it was about Salesforce reporting, right? And that there are these series of gaps. And now, now we're at this point where we're at this tipping point of which, in order to sort of figure out how do I actually do hyper segmented campaigns that are super personalized, that are tuned to the journeys, that I can report attribution to if I'm so inclined to go down that route, in which I can sign up for a revenue number, which I'm expected to by sales, in which I can align to sales and marketing. They have no choice. The CMOs have no choice but today look at that technology and say, the oxygen is being choked out of this organization from all this technology. I need to figure it out, right? I need to streamline it. I need to figure out what's most important, because not all data, not all interactions, not all everything is important. So, so we're at this tipping point, which in some ways is terrifying, but in other ways is absolutely the right place where we need to be.
Right. And Christopher, as a CMO, do you kind of feel like, all right, I need to get my tech stack even more in order? Like, what's the environment for you as a CMO, and then also what you're seeing in the market?
I think for me personally, every company that I've landed at, there's been an immediate initiative when I first get there to dissect and in many cases dismantle the existing marketing stack. Because I think over time, it just, to the point, starts layer over layer over layer, a lot of misused or otherwise unused tech. But I think the why now question is really interesting. And again, Christina and I always agree. It's kind of in terms of that customer experience. But when you think about, that customer journey today is more fragmented than ever. And I think we need to recognize that context, in that, especially when making tech decisions. In the past, we all had data fragment fatigue, but today that customer journey is fragmented just based on how savvy they've become, of the technology that they have, all the different channels, devices. It's just a complex word there. But I think the why now is really rooted in insights. And much needed insights. And that's why I go back to even the analytics, and what's needed there is not just kind of looking back where you were, but really understanding where you are, and even more importantly, where you need to be in order to align with that customer. So I think that's I'll probably repeat that several times because that's so important in this whole discussion.
Absolutely, it makes me think about the Wayne Gretzky quote, where he, skates to where the puck is going to be, not where it is right now. So you need to think about where your customer is going, not just where they are.